At 3:17 in the morning, a man sits upright in bed with the crushing certainty that the life he built is somehow not his own. The job looks right. The relationship looks right. Even the personality looks right. So why does it feel like he's wearing a mask that has grown into his skin? Carl Jung believed this moment is not a breakdown, it's an invitation, the beginning of a confrontation with the stranger living inside you. But first, let me tell you why this matters more today than ever. In the early 20th century, Europe believed it was marching toward reason, progress, and civilization. Beneath the polished surface, something darker was moving. Cities expanded, technology accelerated, traditional religion weakened. The old structures that once told people who they were began to crack. And into that crack stepped Carl Gustav Jung, Swiss psychiatrist, student of myth, explorer of dreams, and one of the most unsettling minds in modern philosophy. Jung had already done what ambitious men are supposed to do. He earned prestige. He joined the inner circle of Sigmund Freud, the giant of psychology. For a moment, he looked like the heir to a new intellectual empire. Then he walked away, not because it was convenient, because he felt that reducing the human soul to repressed sexuality and social conditioning was too small, too mechanical, too dead. He suspected that beneath the civilized self was not just instinct, but myth, symbol, divinity, terror, and unrealized wholeness. What happened next almost destroyed him. After his break with Freud, Jung entered a period he called his confrontation with the unconscious. He recorded dreams, visions, fantasies. He descended deliberately into the irrational. He saw floods of blood, dead bodies, ancient gods, subterranean figures. Years later, World War I broke out, and some of the images he had seen seemed to mirror the catastrophe that was coming. Jung's point was not that he was a prophet. It was that the human psyche contains forces far older and more dangerous than the modern ego wants to admit. And that's where this becomes personal, because you also live with a surface identity that keeps the world manageable. Your role, your reputation, your opinions, your carefully edited biography. Jung called part of this the persona, the social mask. Necessary, yes, but dangerous when mistaken for the whole self. The modern self-improvement industry often tells you to optimize the mask. Better habits, better brand, better image. Jung asks a more unnerving question. What if the parts of you you've rejected are not obstacles to your life, but the doorway to it? What he wrote next changed everything. Jung claimed that the central task of a human life is individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you actually are, not who your family, culture, trauma, or ambition trained you to perform. Not perfection, not self-esteem, wholeness. And the path to that wholeness begins in the one place most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Jung put it with brutal clarity: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That line gets turned into aesthetic wallpaper on the internet, but its real meaning is not soft. Jung is saying you do not become wise by identifying only with your best qualities. You become whole by facing what you have disowned: your envy, cowardice, hunger for control, cruelty, pettiness, vanity, resentment, and even your unlived strengths. Because your shadow is not just the bad in you. It is everything your conscious identity refuses to include. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think the shadow is a problem for bad people. It isn't. The more moral, agreeable, spiritual, or rational you insist on appearing, the more likely your shadow goes underground and gains power in secret. The nicest person in the room may simply be the most divided. That's controversial, but Jung would say it's often true. A person obsessed with looking pure is frequently in the most danger of unconscious corruption. Why? Because whatever you refuse to see in yourself does not disappear. It returns as projection. Suddenly, the trait you hate most in others becomes a clue. The arrogance that enrages you, the weakness you despise, the selfishness you can't stand, the manipulation you always seem to attract. What if part of what you are reacting to is your own denied nature reflected back at you? This is where Jung collides with ancient wisdom and even Stoic philosophy in a surprising way. Stoic philosophy teaches that your suffering often comes not from events, but from your judgments about them. Modern Stoicism has revived that insight for people drowning in anxiety and distraction. Jung goes one level deeper. He asks, who is doing the judging? Is it really you, or a fragile persona defending itself against truths it cannot tolerate? In that sense, modern philosophy after Jung becomes less about forming opinions and more about uncovering the hidden forces beneath them. Here's the counterintuitive claim: self-knowledge can make you feel worse before it makes you free. That's not failure. That's contact with reality. Most people quit here. They mistake discomfort for danger. But there's something even more shocking. The shadow is only the first gate. Because even after you uncover the parts you've buried, you still have to confront the possibility that the person you call me is not the center of your psyche at all. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." It sounds uplifting, almost like a slogan for self-improvement. But Jung meant something far more demanding than follow your passion. Becoming who you truly are may require disappointing people. It may force you to abandon identities that one you love. It may dismantle an entire personality that helped you survive but no longer allows you to live. This is where it gets interesting. Because individuation is not selfish in the shallow sense, but it can look selfish to people who benefited from your unconsciousness. If your role in the family was the responsible one, the peacemaker, the achiever, the quiet one, or the one who never causes trouble, then becoming more whole may feel like betrayal to them and to you. And yes, here's the debatable statement that many people will resist. A large number of so-called good people are not good at all. They are merely obedient, conflict avoidant, and terrified of losing approval. Goodness without inner confrontation is often just domesticated fear. Jung would argue that real morality begins only after you become conscious of your capacity for evil. Until then, you are not virtuous. You are predictable. That idea is uncomfortable because it destroys the fantasy that innocence is enough. It isn't. If you do not know your aggression, it controls you from the shadows. If you do not know your desire for power, it leaks into passive aggression, manipulation, martyrdom, and moral superiority. You don't transcend darkness by denying it. You civilize it by confronting it. So what does this look like in ordinary life? It might mean noticing that your constant busyness is not discipline, but avoidance. It might mean admitting that your need to be needed is not love, but control. It might mean realizing that the career you chose out of status has slowly starved your soul, or that your calm, spiritual identity is built on unexpressed rage. Have you ever wondered why certain patterns keep repeating no matter how much philosophy, productivity, or ancient wisdom you consume? Because insight without integration changes nothing. This is why Jung remains so relevant in modern philosophy, and why his ideas quietly sit beneath so much of our culture's obsession with authenticity. He understood that self-improvement is not just adding better habits. Sometimes it is subtraction, removing lies, recovering buried energies, naming the unlived life. In modern Stoicism, people ask, "What can I control?" Jung adds, "What in me is secretly controlling me?" And the practical application is less glamorous than people hope. Keep a dream journal, track your emotional overreactions, notice your projections, ask what trait in others triggers disproportionate intensity in you, sit with the answer long enough for your self-image to crack. That crack is not the end. It is the opening through which the deeper self begins to speak. Jung's most radical idea was this: the ego, the voice in your head that says, "I." The manager of your daily life is not the totality of who you are. It is only a small island in a vast inner sea. Beyond it lies what Jung called the self, the organizing center of the whole psyche, conscious and unconscious together, not the ego inflated into greatness. The opposite, a greater order you must learn to relate to with humility. This is why so many people feel empty even when they succeed. The ego can win every external prize and still remain starved. It wants control, certainty, image, applause. The self wants integration, meaning, and truth. These are not the same goal. And when you ignore that difference, life starts sending symptoms: anxiety, numbness, obsessive ambition, repeated relationship chaos, sudden depression after achievement, a feeling that your own life is happening at a distance. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That may be one of the most important life lessons of the last century. How many people think they are choosing when they are actually repeating? How many call it my type, my personality, my standards, my luck, when in fact they are circling the same wound, the same family script, the same unexamined fear. If you don't become conscious of your inner patterns, your life will feel haunted by inevitability. But it isn't fate in the mystical sense. It is unconsciousness wearing the mask of destiny. This is where Jung offers something larger than therapy and more demanding than inspiration. He offers a philosophy of human becoming, not the flattening logic that says you are only a product of your childhood, not the glossy optimism that says you can simply reinvent yourself at will. Jung's wisdom is harsher and more hopeful. You are shaped by forces you did not choose, but you are not doomed to remain unconscious of them. That is the hinge of freedom. And notice how this converges with both ancient wisdom and modern philosophy. The Delphic command said, "Know thyself." Stoic philosophy taught mastery over impulse and perception, but Jung complicates both by insisting that the self to be known is deeper, stranger, and more symbolic than reason alone can grasp. You are not merely a rational being needing discipline. You are a layered being of instinct, image, memory, myth, sexuality, fear, and unrealized potential. What if your confusion is not evidence that you are broken, but evidence that you are larger than the identity you've been living? And then comes the emotional peak, the hardest truth of all. Individuation does not mean becoming special. It means becoming real, not superior to others, not purified of contradiction. Real, capable of holding light and shadow without lying about either. Capable of love without self-erasure. Strength without cruelty. Humility without weakness. Purpose without performance. Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." That choice is not made once. It is made every time you refuse a familiar mask, every time you tell the truth about your motives, every time you stop asking, "How do I seem?" and start asking, "What in me is trying to live?" And if you heard that question clearly, then you already know some part of you has been waiting a very long time to be acknowledged. So go back to that person awake at 3:17 in the morning, staring into the dark, feeling the life around him no longer fits. Maybe that moment is not a crisis to medicate away or a mood to distract yourself from. Maybe it is the first honest moment in years. The mask has begun to slip. The soul has begun to object. And for once, the discomfort is telling the truth. This is why Jung matters now more than ever. We live in an age of curated personas, algorithmic identities, productivity worship, and endless comparison. We are taught to perform ourselves before we have ever met ourselves. We study philosophy for better opinions, Stoic philosophy for resilience, modern Stoicism for calm, self-improvement for efficiency. But Jung asks whether the person doing all that optimizing is even whole to begin with. And here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, notice what provokes you, what repeats, what exhausts you, what secretly energizes you, and what you keep performing even when no one is asking. Write it down, especially the ugly parts, especially the embarrassing parts, especially the desires and resentments that do not fit your self-image. Don't fix them yet. First, see them clearly, without excuses, without theatrical guilt, without editing. Because most people will spend their entire lives avoiding this truth. They will call their mask a personality, their wound a destiny, their fear a virtue, their conformity a moral code. They will never ask whether the life they are defending is actually theirs. Will you? Drop your interpretation in the comments. The best answers always come from this community. And if this shifted something in your thinking, subscribe. We go deeper every week into philosophy, wisdom, and the life lessons that actually change how you live. But before you go, remember this. Individuation is not becoming someone else. It is the courageous removal of everything in you that was never truly you. The life you're afraid to face may be the only one that's real.